Yeah, no question. No question whatsoever.
George Webster made some statements in relation to his attendance at one part of the trials. Maybe you could just fill us in on George Webster's statement about whether he did or did not attend a particular trial.
Yes, he was giving an interview. The topic came up of, if Mr. Paradiso had been convicted of these other crimes, perhaps Joan would still be with us. He made a comment to the reporter that they did not attend the pretrial testimony that was given, and that's when all of these sensational stories came out. Unverified stories about Paradiso being a hitman, another woman, the one who had placed the anonymous call to the Websters early on, she came forward and testified and gave a sensational story about being completely beaten up and broken bones in her face, but no medical records or police records. And there were others, and he claimed that they didn't go. There are multiple news articles from that week, most of them saying that the Websters were there. They described where they were sitting. George Webster even spoke with the press and encouraged that they would reconsider the large reward money they had offered if more people would come forward.
Right.
So they indeed were there. And why they would say they weren't, I really am not sure.
Yeah, I'd like to come back once again to the comments of George Webster in relation to the reason for Joan's relatively early departure on the Saturday, rather than hanging on and getting the full Thanksgiving break, where he points to the phone in the course of an interview and says that she used the phone right here, pointing at the phone, to make sure they had materials. He could be simply repeating stuff that he's heard and inferring that she'd used the phone. But he does seem to be going out of his way to lend credence to that story, that was the reason for her departure, by the way he's presenting it there, pointing at the phone as if he has direct knowledge.
Well, and I don't know who he would have heard it from if someone had come up with that suggestion. The young man that Joan was dating at the time, David Duncan, didn't even know Joan was going back.
Well, did classmates of Joan's confirm that? Have we got definitive confirmation that she had made specific prior arrangements with classmates to return early?
No. The only reason that it triggered concern in them was when she did not arrive and show up for classes, which was Monday.
Mm-hmm.
There's never been anyone who's been brought to the attention, brought forward, named, who suggested Joan was going to be meeting with them on Sunday.
Right. Well, I'm looking at some of the articles here now, and it states that she had promised two classmates she would be back Sunday afternoon to discuss their next School of Design assignment, and this is from Monday, December the 7th, 1981, in the Crimson.
Yeah.
Websters
were there. The Websters were there and speaking to the press at that time. How that particular explanation evolved, I'm not entirely certain. Certainly George is the one who is specifically defining it and suggesting that Joan had made the call, and there was no call made.
There was no call made. That's unquestionable from the phone record. Very strange, very strange indeed. When you're dealing with this issue, it does involve someone with whom you had a close relationship, Joan Webster, your sister-in-law. But there are many others also in the Boston area to this day still dealing with the consequences of miscarriages of justice, improper investigations which have gone down. In other words, you are in many ways, Eve, the tip of a rather large iceberg which is waiting to break surface in the Boston area on all these issues, affecting many, many people.
I have been overwhelmed by the number of lives that this has touched, and in what ways. It's extremely painful. It is very painful to relive this and understand it's something entirely different than what I knew at the time. It's heartbreaking. Justice can't be dished out that way. I have pursued and gone to many, many authorities, and it's very clear to me that they don't want the truth to come out, which makes it very difficult for any decent, honest person or any victim, someone who has been hurt by all of this. And this Joan certainly and Marie Iannuzzi certainly were both victimized all over again. by the abuse of power, by the dishonesty, obstruction to really find out what happened. And people have lost their lives in other ways who are still trying to function. And Mr. Paradiso lives the rest of his life in jail.
We're a long way from getting accountability for what has gone on. I mean, the stench of it was quite obvious when John Connolly was convicted down in Florida at the beginning of last year. But really, the Connolly is also only the tip of an iceberg as well. There needs to be a wholesale re-examination of so many cases from that era. But just coming back to your own case, it seems fairly certain that really judicial authorities should take another look at this case.
Yeah, I mean, technically it is an open case. They reopened it when they found out there were some people digging around into it and trying to find out some answers. But they've used that as a, legal blockade to say, well, it's an open case, so we're going to deny you the records. Those records are going to show that it was a very dishonest case from the start and thrown off from the start. It had to have been thrown off from the inside. No question.
The Webster family, according to your analysis of their background, may indeed be well connected in the CIA, and that could prove to be a factor which impedes proper investigation also, not just today, but back at the time.
Oh, I think that's very true, and certainly I did not comprehend, the type of individuals that I was relating to as family. They really have a different mindset, and they were allowed to really be the judge in this. There were many officials coming forward and telling them that Mr. Paradiso was not the likely offender, especially after her remains were found and people were, putting different pieces together, and they said, these pieces don't fit. Mm-hmm. Really, the Websters, in much the way they are right now and today, this is what we believe. And, of course, the natural tendency is for people to assume, oh, they must know, so if they believe it's true, it must be true. I would never be able to be so vocal if I didn't have the documents that clearly say what they say. I lived through it. That's not something tangible for someone else. That's something where I saw and experienced the emotions of the family. I know what they did. I know what they said. A good example of that is an extortion call that I had recalled. The family is now telling me they don't remember anything about it. It was a very dramatic extortion call. George Webster was wired. He met with the extortionist. They traveled across state lines. The man was never charged, which that really stuck with me. And then the family denies any recollection of it whatsoever. Well, that incident is most definitely in the FBI records.
Yeah, that's what's impressive about the work that you've done, and we have got photostats and reproductions of the evidential material you've been assembling, and some of that is on breakfornews.com. It's also on joanwebstermurder.yolasite.com. That's YOLASITE.com. When you take a look at that material, it speaks for itself. You're assembling a very careful and methodical review of the evidence in this case. We have scratched the surface of some of the most telling points that you raise in the course of this discussion. I'd like to congratulate you on what you have uncovered since we last spoke back in January 2008, and also to thank you, Eve Carson, for joining us on Break for News today.
Thank you, Fenton.
And it only remains for me to thank you for your interest and attention, and to hope that you will, like me, lend your support to the campaign for justice for Joan Webster, and to remedy all of the collateral damage which is still going on as a result of decades of corruption in Boston. That's it for this edition of The Beautiful Truth. I'll be back very soon with more, and I hope you can join me for that. But in the meantime, for breakfornews.com, this has been Fenton Dunn reporting.
You always keep me warm, hold me safe and away from harm.